Mm-hmm.
Welcome. A Googleplex welcome to JWC Livestream. JWC Livestream. Today's episode is Paranormal Inspirations. What does that mean? Well, it's in relation to world building. When you write a big, huge work of fiction, you got to be able to handle expo. There's an infinite number of ways that you do that as far as your narrative drivers, through dialogue, through this, through that. But the most important thing is to know how to deconstruct certain worlds, certain parts of worlds, planetology, cryptozoology. Again, if you're writing fantasy, if you're writing about, if it's nonfiction or something, then you got to crack open a history book and many history books, which is also helpful for what we're talking about. But we're talking about fantasy, or sci-fi, or horror. All that world building is going to help, and what we're going to present to you this evening is going to help you do that. With me today is Tom, my co-host. Tom, how are you?
Excellent.
Very good to hear. We've had a number of technical difficulties this week, not just on this episode, but on the one on Monday as well. So, we're trying to get that stuff resolved, but it's good that we're here anyway. I love doing shows with Tom. Tom, what have you been working on creatively, man? What are the projects that you're doing?
I'm correcting the horrendous job that Word Dictate for Word did on my my Florida novel. About halfway through, it was just a terrible ordeal. Otherwise, I would be done with the editing. I could move on to get it into Kindle. I'm also working on about halfway through The Deadly Mile. I take on the Beast of Bray Road for John Penkram. And an awful lot of fun stuff happening. Ghost lights and spectral dogs and houses filled with things that want to kill you along this road. There's 11 houses on this road that runs a mile long, and each one of them has their separate, distinct haunting type entities, etc. And so that one's a blast to write. It's Penkram's got a group of friends with him that are helping him, a couple of witches and some psychics, and an old friend that pops up and knows him from his bachelor days, and she still kids him about that. And so it's interesting. Two women and three guys are on this case trying to solve this Bray Road Dogman entity mystery. One of the there was 6 people, but Yvonne tried to go out on her own and investigate, and she got slightly killed. So
just a little.
So that's a really an awful lot of fun. And I have my Vela novel tonight is episode 18 goes up tonight.
Sweet.
That's a real lot of fun to work on. So
excellent. Yeah, another Penkram, right on. And you were telling me not long ago that you're getting ready to put a Penkram collection together, huh?
Yeah, on Kindle. I have enough. It should run about 120, 140 pages, which is really nice. And dice it up for a good paperback hardcover edition and an ebook. And
I would instantly buy a Penkram paperback, man. I mean, It's not. I'm not even kidding. Like I would definitely want to check that out. You know, those are great stories.
Yeah, it all depends on how, I'm going to put it all together in a Word document and format it and see what I've got. And if I hit 120 plus pages, I'll pull the trigger
Yeah,
and we'll
right
go
on.
from there.
That's a great idea, man. There needs to be more Penkram and Penkram like things in the world.
Hmm.
That's awesome.
Then if I could, I have one more Shirella story, the very first adventure that I came up with when she's only 16 years old. And when that's done, I'll have another volume of stories that take place before this Vela novel takes place. So it's sort of a prehistory or a prequel to this gigantic story that I'm doing on Vela. So
mm,
that's going to be a lot of fun. It's called Red Vengeance,
mhm.
and
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
get to see
The
some
more
really good sword action with
action and calm.
this very small 16-year-old girl going up against these three huge men that killed her uncle. And she hunts them down and kills them one by one. So that's going to be a blast to write.
Right on, man. Right on. You want to hear more about Shirella and her action-packed adventures? You go check out Tom's Amazon Vela that he's pushing. A new one drops tonight. Tom, you want to definitely drop that link in the
Oh yeah,
live stream so people
yep.
can pick it up. That's great, man. It sounds very exciting. I wrapped up last Friday. I wrapped up Exsanguinator.
Hmm.
That's like 42,000 words and change. It's a novella, a little longer than Babbletron, you know. Like I'd say, um, more violent than Babbletron.
How could
um,
you be more violent than Babbletron?
well, I'll say that Babbletron is like modern war, and this is more like William Wallace
Yeah,
medievals.
cool.
So we're talking about like yeah, I mean the guy has this thing, it's a sword on a chain. So it's like a sword that's a chain whip. It's like 10 foot of chain. And the other handle for swinging is like a four-handed grip, which is also he uses that to batter. So we're talking about like it's on its way to your hammers, man, to be honest. Circling back to that, your hammer dude who was like it's in the ballpark. I mean, I don't know if it's as out there. And that project's going quick. It's awesome because I might have an editor for it and the cover artist is already on board. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to fast track that. But I'd be honored if you beta read it, to be honest with you.
Okay,
Um,
done.
as soon as I get it wrapped up, because it's a rough zero draft and work's been busy. But as soon as I can get that, it's the deadline. It's like 2 weeks, and then he's gonna pick it up. So I want to have Ali on here at some point.
Hmm.
He's really awesome. He's got a lot of things to say, and he's a great artist. So
Yeah, I'd like to talk to him
um,
about doing some covers for me.
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's a cool dude. So the other thing beyond that is I'm outlining. It should be a nice book. It's a Journey to the Mountain. It's like this. It's like the story. I guess it's like semi autobiographical, but the point, I talk about this mountain, Tom.
Hmm.
So like I'm gonna fictionalize it where like the mountain happens,
Cool.
and so it's like make a nice, and it won't be bloody. It's gonna be like a nice uplifted. Oh well, it'll have its moments, but nothing crazy. um that's is that the dream comes true, so that's a different kind of no violence. So some poems here, some poems there, but more and I haven't gotten back to essays. I've just been too busy, but I'm helping someone with an editing project too, um a friend of mine. just reading through this thing, combing through it, and kind of like looking for continuity, and everything's coming together nicely. So this project should be like another 42,000 word thing for Dave Lockwood. So that'll be cool.
Hmm.
And otherwise, life's busy. It's like that. So we're checked
Cool.
in. Um, that's what it is to be a creative obsessive, folks. We got all those projects going on. And I think I speak for Tom when I say that if we had more time to write, that we would write more.
Yep.
It would just never, like I'm trying with a word yield. I'm trying to do 2,000 words a day. Doesn't always happen. For the last month, it happened. That's why that book got smashed. I mean, I feel like I wrote that in less than a month or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, I really do. Because it was 2,000, boom, 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 2,000 words every day. I never missed.
Good.
So that word yield means creative obsession. I know you write a lot, Tom. How many notebook pages? Because Tom composes a notebook. How many notebook pages you write in a day, Tom?
Oh, to 4 to 5.
Yeah,
Um. So I also started October October 20th. I started keeping track in an Excel sheet, uh, my words, daily word count, and it's about 160 days, and I'm at 193,000 words. So I'm way ahead of my 1,000 words a day.
that's
So,
see, folks. That's an excellent method for monitoring logistically your word budget and your word yield. Okay, Tom monitors his yield. He's got it in an Excel sheet. He's so because the thing is, it's so horrible to it's when people look at a novel, they say that's so many words.
mhm.
And they get all petrified and their legs turn to jelly and whatever. And it's like, no, 500 to 1,000 words a day. I mean, at that to me, 1,000 words a day. And Tom doesn't type, but he writes. So in script, he can get that done because he's monitoring it. He's counting as it's going along.
Yep.
So it's the little tiny drip. It's the erosion of each day. You don't look at the whole book. You look at the chapter. You look at the next 1,000 words. You keep it
Right.
like that. That's
Yeah,
a
if you look at
wonderful
the
way to be.
entire project and say, "Oh my God, how am I going to write this?" Yeah, that could scare you off if you just say, "What happens in this chapter?" and how do
That's
I
right.
approach this? And you even if you have to outline chapter by chapter,
Hmm.
that's an excellent thing to do.
I do.
And you you take it like one day at a time, a couple pages a day, and
That's
yeah,
it.
like I said, before you know it, you've got 365,000 words in a year, and that's a
Yeah.
lot of content.
And that feels great when you're standing on top of that mountain, 100,000 words, looking down where you remember when you first started writing, doesn't it, Tom? When you
Mm.
lay down that amount of words in a time.
Oh, sure. Now
Yeah,
among that large count, I've been doing some medium uh essays, like I should call them, for that particular platform. So that's very, very interesting. I just did a piece on 1,200 words on how I introduce this rediscovered romance in my fiction. So starting with
mm-mm.
Emily, for so many
Mm.
years I didn't get the urge to do any, and then you read Emily, how she literally almost bumps into all those boyfriends, gets hit by a bicycle and she trips over people and, oh, hi, and so that was intriguing and it was a lot of fun to write romance into that story. So now it's Pencram's picked up the ball with that. His friend Amos has a fiance, and for a long time he was a widower, John. So now I had just finished a story where he meets what becomes his second wife, and yeah, it adds that extra dimension to stories when you interweave some romance or some potential romance. They eye each other, they talk, and you can see the cat and mouse play that they have that couples do, and you know, I'm enjoying it but it has to fit. You can't just wedge in a romance. It's got to be organic. So,
Yeah, yeah. Romance can be very effective. And first and foremost, it's another form of tension.
hmm,
Even if it goes nowhere, if it's a female main character, she may be worried about the male and vice versa. So there's a heart space. What do I mean by heart space? Well, some people like to get psychological with their writing, but you also have to get um, emotional. You have to quantify what these people are feeling and how their feelings are going to motivate their actions. If they're all calm and rational all the time, then everybody's Mr. Spock. It's like that's not going to do you any good.
hmm,
You got to have people who are involved in something or have a weakness or have a something diverting them, preoccupying them, and that can create all kinds of tension. But Tom, you do romance well, so it makes sense to me. Um, I don't know. I haven't really leaned into that.
hmm.
Sort of in Nidhogg, strangely enough, and I guess in Babbletron it gets a little steamy from time to time with up in Angel Zone or whatever. But
Right.
it's not like Scarlett O'Hara stuff.
Hmm.
It's not like that. I think you could probably do that. Um,
I'm tempted.
so yeah, well, sooner or later, just do me a favor and make it like on an asteroid or something. Make it,
So
like do all that, do everything about that, but just make her like live on an asteroid in a
instead of a
community.
Western ranch, put her on an asteroid,
Yeah,
right?
dig it. I wrote that short story like that. It's a 2,000 worder thing. Eventually I got to get that in a book, but it's like, I don't know. That's sitting around gathering dust. Um,
I do have
so,
my Martian novel has this woman named Astra, and
hmm,
she used to be really uh hot and heavy with the main character. And when they re-meet, they do a lot of bathtub hopping. I'll just leave it at that. And then she meets Ryan is the main character. She meets Ryan's good friend Burke, and it's like instant attraction. And you know, Burke feels really terrible. He goes, "I'm sorry if I stole her." She goes, "Nope, we were just rekindling what we used to have, and it's been long dead. You're welcome to don't feel word bad about her. She's a great girl." And so it's
hmm,
got some almost rated R stuff in that Martian novel, but
yeah,
it felt right at the times it put it in, so I ran with that. And you know, so she's
cool.
a very very erotic woman, sensual, and that's part of her weaponry that she's so attractive that people get distracted, and you know she's a thief, so she uses it to the full advantage. So no more on that. I'll let you get to beta read uh
Hmm.
the Martian
Yeah.
heist story.
Yeah, no spoilers. I'd like to get into another one of your books. We'll trade, man. I'll read that and you read Exsanguinator or whatever.
Yeah.
So today we plunge from romance into unromance.
Hmm.
Now what does that mean? Well, there's no corner to be painted in. If romance in this sense is attraction, to a thing or a person or a place in time, then unromance would be the opposite, wouldn't it? And
Sure.
now what that means is an entity like a cryptid, okay, that will terrorize you, and possibly alter your life forever, saying, how in the world could something like this be in this world? Because you believed your folks when they said there were no monsters out there. But some people say otherwise, and that's an unromantic thing. We shouldn't want, like, there are people who are monster hunters. There are people who are ghost hunters. They go to derelict places that are, naturalizing, falling apart, abandoned places, and suspicious places where people think that they've seen something not quite right. Some Twilight Zone stuff. So that's an unromantic thing. No one should want to go there. And if you encounter it, it could unseat your consciousness with unparalleled horror, like you've never imagined, like a nightmare come true. And then of course there's the mystery of being out in the woods and not knowing what's there with you. That could be a very unromantic situation. So we're trying to help you build that with today's Paranormal Inspiration show. We read books that have inspired us to that end. Fantasy, sci-fi, horror. Okay, that's what we're doing. Now, these people who write these books, they may believe the things that are in them. And that's not, look, I believe all kinds of stuff, but that's not why we're not evangelizing Bigfoot, for example. What we're saying is, if you're going to write fiction, if you want to write fantasy, sci-fi, or horror, where you're dealing with things that are not normal, it's not walking down the street normal. This is weird. You want to write weird? You want to write different? You want to write shocking? Well, you got to go, if you want to, it's like anything else. You want to write weird, you got to read weird. Okay. Regardless about how I feel about Bigfoot, or how you feel about Bigfoot, or about how Tom feels about Bigfoot, investigation of a cryptid is a world building tool, because it teaches you how something that we're having trouble putting a finger on is eluding us. And even if it's all rubbish and that's what you feel in your heart, it's still a world building exercise. It's nothing to be trivialized. When we go through the writer's rooms and we see all these questions, I don't know what to write, I don't have inspiration, etc., etc. So, well, go out. If you, and again, it's all about what you want to write. If you want to write romance, read romance, right? If you want to write adventure, you got to read adventure. It's the same thing with weird. You want to write weird, you got to read weird. So if you're here to write weird, fantasy and such, this is what we're talking about. So my book that I'm reading today, I didn't write it, I'm reading it. It's by Ron Moorhead. It's The Quantum Bigfoot. Now, I'm enjoying this book very much. There's a lot to learn here. The guy who's, first of all, he's Dave Politis, who is, and I respect him as an investigator. He does a bunch of stuff with missing people, the Missing 411 series, but he also goes over cryptids and various aspects of ufology. And he does it from the perspective of a criminal investigator, as if he's trying to solve a mystery. And he was formerly in law enforcement, and he uses those strategies to try to put the finger on Bigfoot. Now, Dave Politis recommends this guy, Ron Moorhead, so that's why I picked up his book. There's others too that we're going to go over, because there's a point behind going over it. So I'm going to read a little bit from this. After researching the Bigfoot Sasquatch phenomena for over 45 years, I realized that many people are still in Never Never Land about these beings. Although many have their paradigm fixed, and let's pay attention to that word paradigm, folks. I go over it a lot here. Although many have their paradigm fixed, no one, in fact, knows for sure who or what these beings really are, how they originated, or how they do some of the things they do. There's a number of mysterious phenomena that surround Bigfoot. That's why he's saying that. The book elucidates this matter. Most of us believe almost all of what we could see with our eyes, but often doubt what cannot be seen. I believe that any mystery through the method of science or technology can be solved. So that's a very optimistic view. It's not a poo-poo like, oh, you believe in Bigfoot? Something like that. He's looking, right? My first book, Voices in the Wilderness, was my 40-year chronicle of how this fascinating subject started for me. So he's been at this for quite some time. You can imagine that his book is data rich, which is what you need to reverse engineer a world. Now my research points me into a direction I would never have believed. The quantum Bigfoot is my effort to connect all the dots, painting a picture that will help fellow researchers and at the same time bring awareness to the public of what these beings are reportedly capable of and why. After all, if they can find us, why haven't we found them? For me, Bigfoot is more than just a stealthy animal, like a black puma or a Japanese grizzly bear. Many such animals are very elusive and are able to stay hidden from humans, but Bigfoot is different in a way that seems to baffle scientists and researchers alike. They don't just play by the same rules. So it goes on and on. It may not be the science you learn in high school, but it is established science called quantum physics. Mathematics of quantum physics is accepted worldwide by over 1 million physicists. However, even within its growing popularity, many classic scientists in a discipline, three-dimensional model, would not even discuss Bigfoot with me. They want to believe that a hominid-like creature exists, but have a problem researching outside their classical disciplines. So I could go on. Ron Moorhead writes fairly well, and he gets into a number of interesting perspectives when it comes to a very mysterious cryptid. A lot of people think that Bigfoot is just an ape. And when I listen to these people talk who are researchers who have decades doing it, they all come back with certain details. Now, they got those details because of long study and having an open mind and having the ability to perceive and record what it is they're seeing, to think clearly. You could say they're just bumbling geese out there, swill, and you could mock them and tear them down. But if you watch them and the data that they're dealing with and how they have access to it, what they know, it doesn't sound to me like they're fooling around. And I don't know that any of them are doing fantastically well. They're in a very, very small niche. Some people think that they're goofs and they don't take them seriously. So they must be doing what they're doing because they believe in it. And that's the key. You can't believe in what you can't accept. So there could be a number of truths out there that you're never going to get your hooks in because you right away you go, there's no way. What are you serious? You believe in that? What do you make? You make money doing that? Somebody might say, like, why do you care? And it's like, you want to learn mysteries. You want to get to the bottom. You want to learn the truth. But in our case, what we're here for is to get inspiration. These men are inspiring. And these researchers, these people, whatever they may be, they're inspiring because they give you data about very, very mysterious circumstances. And you can use that to build a whole world. Circling back to paradigm, Ron Moorhead mentions paradigm. If Bigfoot is not in your paradigm, you won't even believe that it could exist. You won't even take the hypothesis that there could be something. They could show you plaster casts. fur samples, or hair, I suppose we should say, blood samples. You'd hear about all kinds of stories. You could watch the video and hear the facts of people who have dealt with these encounters. All that stuff is world building information for a fantasy writer who wants to understand, well, how does an elf track a troll or something? Read all these Bigfoot encounters by the people who hunt Bigfoot. I mean, it'll practically give you a step-by-step guide. It's like especially Dave Politis, he goes over it during his classes on YouTube. But this book breaks it down very, very deep, because this guy's been at it for a long time. So if you're looking to know about monsters, if you're looking to know about monster hunters, if you're looking to know about a paradigm in which all that stuff is going on, don't ask the internet, what I don't have any ideas. Who has ideas? Get one of these books, crack it open, and subject yourself to the research that's inside, and really imagine and think about where that took this person who wrote this book, and then go further. Imagine the Bigfoot, the creature, the hairy person itself, and what its life must be like. Man, woman, child, whatever. Imagine what its life is like running through the woods. They don't seem to notice temperature. They dig water. They're in water a lot. Some people say that there's a foul smell that precedes them. It's all different circumstances, tying it up with ufology. Possibilities are endless, as is the inspiration, and the inspiration is the highest coin in the realm for creative writers, especially for creative obsessors like me and Tom. Tom, what did you think about that passage I read?
Very, very good. It's I'm in the Bigfoot as a humanoid species camp. They're not
Me too.
apes.
No,
Especially
no.
if you look at the historical record, especially in this on North America, that
Mm-hmm.
all the Indian accounts and the first Europeans that traveled across the country and saw these things, they did
Mm-hmm.
not call them apes. They called them wild men,
Wild men,
right?
giants, and the
And
natives.
even after the gorilla was discovered and chimpanzees, they still called them wild men.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's
and they're the wild thing is when they find blood and hair samples with the bulb on the end, so they get the mitochondrial DNA testing.
mm,
Until recently, when they've had gotten the results back, the so-called experts, science, um, said that these samples were contaminated because the results keep coming back as human. And I
yeah.
said, how could it be if these things are apes? Then how come you keep getting results that they're humans? And yeah, the
Yeah,
conclusion is that they are humans.
yeah. No, I mean that's what D'Souza said to Politis. He basically said the reason that happens is because of a protocol within those organizations. Um, and uh, and yeah, they keep saying it's an ape, but it doesn't fit the characteristics of an ape. Like
No, not at
you,
all.
you no, you watch all these commercials and they have it mythologized where it's simian like, but it's really based on what I've heard and what's been told to me by these people who are really, really deep researchers, profound researchers. It's just a human variant.
Yep.
So what does that mean when you got a human variant? Is it under a curse? Is it being experimented on by entities from another world or possibly another dimension? Is it an evolutionary offshoot? Is it the result of something like a parallel evolution where it's always been here and
Hmm.
it has nothing to do with us actually? It's its own it's us, but it's a variant, like it's not us. So just ticking down the list of all those possibilities gets you thinking, doesn't it, Tom?
Right. And
Um,
yet, if a parallel evolution is interesting, in that you also have a lot of stories, if you read it through it, that human women have been kidnapped by these creatures and have
They
had
sure
children
have.
by them. So they're at least compatible on that end genetically. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a very, very, very interesting as to why they come and go. Yeah, they're hard to find, or they don't get. Yeah, they get tracked down. I mean, in finding Bigfoot, they spent 10 years trooping through the woods and didn't find a whole lot. That's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
As to how they exist is a different. That's for maybe
He's
for another day.
yeah,
A
yeah.
discussion.
It's only a mild gloss over, but they may have powers. They may have a society. They may have a relationship with another society that we're unaware of that gives them protection. There are accounts of wild man and Sasquatch where Native American elders will talk about, and this has been published in newspapers. They talk about the powers that Sasquatch manifests and
Hmm.
what it can do. So we're not going to go into that because you're right, Tom. That's another rock to lift up. We already have a few of them rolled over as it
Uh,
is.
but if you
Now,
notice, if you investigate the totem poles out in the Indians and out there, is that although those totem poles are composed of creatures that exist, that they believe exist, the eagle and the bear, etc. And there's also Sasquatch mixed
mhm,
in those. So they don't deal in fantasy when with these something like that.
no, they don't.
And they just consider them, they've always been there, and they don't bother them, and you know
And it's just they have a more etherealist paradigm where they regard the unknown. Like I'm sure they're discerning and skeptical, but they don't automatically use the materialist paradigm to turn something off.
right.
They have their beliefs, their traditions, and they're mystical, certainly, but their mind is open to the fact that there's something going on. And oh well, anyway, read The Quantum Bigfoot by Ron Moorhead, folks. If you like what you're hearing as far as making you think. Any book is a thought experiment if you think.
Hmm.
So make sure you do. Um, Now, Tom, how about you, Tom? What are you reading for us?
I have a classic from 1973 called The
Mm,
Dragon and the Disc by F.W. Holiday. And it's an
nice.
exploration of ancient records going back to mankind's beginning of essentially you have UFOs and what you call sea serpents or Loch Ness monster type creatures. And he contends that all around the world, on every continent except maybe Antarctica, and in every religion, there are two constant motifs: the dragon and a disc. And he feels that they're representatives of evil. The dragon is evil, and the disc is good. And
Hmm.
he also has it's a really excellent book. Basically, he traces the origin of the ancient stories, and he says that these are real, not just religious trappings and writings, and because they're based on actual real things that happen. The discs in the sky and the creatures in the lakes and rivers and waters where these people lived. So the passage here has about toward the end where he's speculating about what these things could be. Here it's a most of the diehard opponents of the paranormal have now died, swathed in their cocoons of prejudice, and more liberal generation holds the field. Laboratories for investigating the paranormal exist in most civilized countries. Technical papers on how the paranormal may affect their particular fields of study have been published recently by, and he lists a entire 5 or 6 universities, Yale, Cambridge, North Wales, etc., University of Edinburgh. There's no lack of investigation talent. The paranormal may be a physical event or a mental event, and it is by no means always easy to distinguish between the two. If discs are similar in their intrinsic nature to apparitions, then we may learn something instructive about each, comparing notes about one with notes of the other. Moreover, we may also learn something about dragon phenomena, because dragon phenomena, although apparently objective in nature, can be demonstrated only to the extent that UFO phenomenon can be demonstrated. That is to say, both can occasionally be photographed at a distance, both yield actual returns on sonar and radar, respectively, yet neither leave behind any material evidence for analysis. The UFO, as we have seen, can actually disappear while under observation in the manner of an apparition. Whether dragons can do so must also remain a possibility until we know more about the nature of these strange happenings. The superficial myth of the holy material universe died with Queen Victoria. Toward the end of the last century, the view arose that all interactions involve material objects. We know that there are fields in which that are wholly non-material. The quantum mechanical interactions are wholly non-material, that they are described but the most important and most basic equations of present-day quantum mechanics. No physical base for paranormal phenomena has ever been isolated. The effects tend to make nonsense of our everyday concepts of time, space, and causation. It is as if we are dealing with a totally different form of reality to our own. Carl Jung himself, in his old age, had reached the conclusion that part of the mind lies beyond the bounds of recognized space-time. So, basically, the entire book is really an excellent examination of reports of let's call them Loch Ness creatures, that why in the world they have Loch Ness has been combed and radared and they've done drag nets, and yet they don't find anything in these sonar. Well, they do find once in a while a sonar reading, but there's something so large should have been found a long time ago, and yet they seem to come and go. And the same with UFOs seem to have several different states of being. They could be solid, they can be like a gaseous, they could be somewhere in between, and
Yes.
they also just seem to just also come and go in the blink of an eye. So it's a valuable book about the
Mm.
existence of things, and a lot of other. He goes into a lot of other things, the Cottingberg fairies and the Norse mythologies, and giant axes being found all over Europe that somebody used. They weren't just decorative; they were axes that belonged to a 10 or 12 foot tall person that were used cut wood and etc. So there's a large amount of information in this book, and it's really inspiring. You just go read a chapter. He goes into what are dragons and what are discs, and he goes into the serpent people and all the ancient records of that of these things. And I was inspired by this book to write a couple stories concerning creatures, not in Loch Ness, but in Lake Champlain, which is up in upstate New York and in Vermont. And yeah, it's a really, really good book. I definitely will. I'm now looking at it. I'm going to read it again. I read it when it first came out when I was a kid, and now it's inspiring me. The subtitles, an investigation of the totally fantastic.
Well, Tom, please give it to us from the top. Give us the title, the full title of the book, and the author.
It's The Dragon and the Disc, an investigation of the totally fantastic by F.W. Holliday, who was a journalist who got to meet and travel with a gentleman named Ivan T. Sanderson, who was the original cryptozoologist. And he was a skeptic, and he started noticing, he goes, there's too much evidence here, there's too much going on here for something to not be happening. And he wrote another book called The Great Orm of Loch Ness, history of the lake and of what it could be. And the guy's he writes like a journalist. He's very succinct, and he sticks to facts. He's not He does not go into the fantastical. He sticks to his what he
Mhm.
knows, and he speculates, and it's really well done. Really good book. And like as far as world building, you open up to any chapter here, and there's all sorts of information that you could spin off and create a story with. There's ancient tombs found in Ireland that resemble modern day UFOs if you look at them from the side. And they've got openings, and it's so the ancient peoples were seeing something. And as to what, it's up to you to decide. If you could take that information and you could spin it any way you want, and authors have done that. You know, uh,
Yeah, yeah. Well, especially if you're inspired, you read enough of this stuff, and eventually some of it'll, you'll have a creative, bolt of inspiration that it'll come to you, a character, a place, a civilization, a circumstance. And then as soon as that happens, you start writing.
hmm,
um, so the wisdom, what it is that we're tying together between these two books. My book, the word is clearly paradigm. Now, your book that you were reading out of, they mentioned about is it a mental state or is it actually manifest physically? In other words, is the person misperceiving, or are they somehow deceived and they're not seeing something right? That's the
hmm,
first question that you ask. Is my main character really experiencing this? The minute you put the label real or reality on it, that means you have to go, well, this is a fantasy. So apparently, in this world, the secondary world that I'm writing in, and the paradigm that that world has, that reality, there is Bigfoot. There are dragons or leviathans or sea serpents, Loch Ness monsters, Ogopogo. There are saucer craft. There are discs. So in that fantasy story is its own world. And there are many great things written about the secondary world that came out of the Inkling, specifically Professor Tolkien. And I
hmm,
was just watching a fabulous documentary about that sort of thing not long ago, and he and Lewis came to the conclusion. Um, the thing that happens in the secondary world is something that can happen in the secondary world. So it needs an explanation. You have to decide, is it mental? Is it physical? Is it magical? Is it scientific, quantum mechanical? Or is this just what time of day it is in the paradigm you're writing? Um,
hmm,
Nidhogg Chronicles is about ufology. It has its own paradigm, its own world. Everything is balanced. There's an explanation. It may be a mysterious explanation. It may not spell it all out, but it's there, and it has to make sense. It has to be coherent. It has to apply to what's going on. So every book, when you're a fantasy writer, almost because there's the Lovecraftian, you know, the Lovecraft circle and the Cthulhu mythos. That's a paradigm where there's certain things that are real in that story, real in that world. And you have to map that out to some extent to maintain continuity, especially if the thing you're writing becomes epic and big. Um, so that's something you got to concern yourself with if you're trying to write really big, huge scale fiction. Um, you
hmm,
want to be able to be coherent with your fantasy. Give it enough continuity, enough realism, and there can't be contradictions because that'll dump shock it. People will go, "Hey, that doesn't make sense. In the last chapter, it was this. It bled green. Now it's bleeding red." Uh, unless there's and your explanations can't be um, like it has to feel authentic. There has to be industrial terminology. Like, in other words, if it's science, it's science. If it's alchemy, it's alchemy. It all has to relate together. and be coherent. Tom, how about you, man? What do you think about this whole metaphysics versus the paradigm you're writing? What's real? What's not real? What's your take on it?
It's wow. Take on you have to leave. There has to be. I think has to be some unsolved, unresolved parts of a lot of mysteries. Like in John Pencram's world, there are
Good.
things that happen that I throw out there that I don't explain, and they're not about to be explained. And I'm not going to go through the exercise of for myself to explain. It just is. It's something that happened, like the creature in one room unfurnished that's living in the house, the room up on the third floor that no one goes
Mhm.
into.
Yeah.
Where it came from and where it went, I have no idea. It just
Yeah.
I only report what happened in that room and how they drove it out of that room. It's a story about the blood elf that wants the building that these two people bought that the elf thinks it belongs to him. Um, it just is. He's
Yeah.
there, and or the dinosaur in the garden. I just introduced a guy who looks out his window. First page sees a dinosaur eating his roses. That's no explanation. It's there, and there are apparently a lot of dinosaurs around, and it's just that happened to be in that world. You just it's some things just are not explainable, or it destroys the illusion if you try to explain too much.
That's
Right.
very true. That's very true, Tom. You make a very good point. Learn when to let mystery be mystery. Because when it comes to certain things, a mystery, what's left unsaid is incredibly important to the imagination and therefore the inspiration of the reader.
Hmm.
Leaving details out in bits and pieces tactically until those questions have to be answered by some point in the narrative. Um, Tom's absolutely right. Don't forget to be mysterious with your world building. Don't forget to leave mysteries unanswered, especially if your adventurers or your main character can then solve those mysteries. And
Right.
that might be a bloody enterprise,
Hmm.
depending on what it is that they're involved in.
Sure.
Um, Sometimes the mystery, when it gets solved, you die. That's the whole point behind having mysterious circumstances is the unknown is a jacket of tension. It's the easiest thing in the world to put on the main character because then you're living through that unknown. You're embracing that fear. And the more of it that's there, the more convinced you are, the more you're going to get pulled into the story.
Hmm.
So,
Yep.
very good notion, Tom. Very good notion.
There's a
Uh,
great movie called The Curse of the Demon, where a psychologist goes up against a sorcerer. The sorcerer claims he can control a demon, and he's going to prove it by having the demon kill him in 48 hours, the psychologist. And what he does is he slips a parchment of runes into the guy's pocket, and he says, all you have to do to not die is return that piece of paper to me. And the guy skips off, and it's hard, and that to skip toward the end, of course, it backfires on the sorcerer, and at the end in the train station, the psychologist watches as the demon kills the sorcerer. But as the police come running up and say what happened, he says, "Oh, he got hit by the train." And he turns around, he says to the female, the lead, maybe we should just not question things and just let it go. And so sometimes you do have to do that. Just walk away
yeah,
and just let the paradigm that he was hit by a train, let that be the explanation.
yeah.
And
Let well enough alone, as it
hmm,
were. Yeah, the mystery of it is better for the reader to figure out. You're right. So this is, that's what they say. Time flies when you're having fun.
Wow.
And it's we're at that time again when we these paranormal inspirational world building shows. It blinks by. We hope you enjoyed this program as much as we enjoyed making it. Go to joeswritersclub.com, check out our author page and our blogs, sign up at joeswriters.club for our forums, check out JWC social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and please, most importantly, go to YouTube, like and subscribe, and share with your friends if you like this content. And you know creative people, people who are writers, painters, whatever it is, but especially a creative writer who's interested in fantasy, fiction, horror, sci-fi. Every first Monday of the month, we try to bring you a paranormal inspiration show, so we can help get you inspired, which is incredibly important for writers of fiction. JWC can't make you a better writer. You have to do that yourself with effort and obsession. But JWC tries to make you a different writer, and being a different writer might just be the trick that you need. You may need to be a little bit different or a little bit out there, and we try to help you out with that. Thank you so much for listening. I want to thank Tom Tiernan, my co-host, for doing the show with me. And we're going to see you again real soon, folks. Stay creative. Very, very important. Take care.
Be good.